welcome to the Relationship Revivalist Podcast. My name is John, as always, and I am here with my beautiful and gorgeous wife, Jess.
Oh, John, I just love to hear you say that.
Well, next week we'll have you do your version of introducing me.
That's probably only fair.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk to everyone about a topic that I think is necessary.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And so we're going to go ahead and dive on in.
Let's dive.
Because I think, honestly, this is one of those times where we're going to talk about us, and we're going to tell our listeners exactly how we do our relationship. I think it'll give some sort of a basis as to how we approach our life and our relationship, and these things can actually be implemented in other people's relationships. They can use our things and put them in their relationship as well. And
we were thinking about, what are some things that we do consistently and we feel like we do well that make our relationship something that we enjoy being in.
Absolutely. So the question is one that I think a lot of people will ask and probably have already asked while they've been listening to the podcast. And that question is, well, what makes John and Jess so special? What is it that they do that makes their relationship work so well?
It's not like we're so special. It's just, how come they seem happy all the time? And we know, I'm sure we have some people wondering, like, well, are they really that happy all the time? I mean...
Well, yeah, because we're only on the podcast at 15 minutes a week. I mean, there's so much more to life. But honestly, I will tell you from the deepest parts of my heart that we do not argue. Like, it's like a rarity for us to argue. And yes, we have disagreements, but everyone has those disagreements, and we work past them. We systematically will work past these disagreements, and if we can't get past them, then we move on, and we don't keep bantering each other about it.
And normally it's just like a misunderstanding. Like, one of us thinks that the other said something and meant it a totally different way than we really did, and once we clear it up, then we're fine. So... Yeah, we don't really have a lot of like disagreements where we just can't see eye to eye. I don't think we've ever really had that before.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this we can attribute to having a Christian relationship, an equally yoked relationship. Because when you don't have an equally yoked relationship, things are so much tougher to have that relationship that is just exuding an explosive type of love.
Exactly. And there are some things that we will not tolerate. And so from the beginning, we put some boundaries up, right, or out.
Absolutely.
Personal boundaries for ourselves with each other. There are, things that we know we will not go in a conversation. If we're arguing or something like that, we're not gonna like hit below the belt, so to speak. And then also we've set up boundaries with us against the world, like us and people who aren't the two of us.
That's code for God. United Front.
Exactly. That's what we like to call United Front. So it's important to have those set up from the beginning, and that's something that we have done. And we keep them set up. We didn't say, oh, this is what it's going to be like, and then just forget about it and get past them and not do it. You have to keep it up. And relationships take work. But with anything that takes work, it's something that you can end up being proud of and love. And the more you're willing to put little bits of work every day into it, the easier it really is. Just like with anything that takes time and attention and work, if you neglect it for very long, it's going to take even more time and attention and work. Like outside in the yard, the weeds. If you're out pulling weeds every day or even every week, it's just a little job. But if you leave them for a month or months at a time, when you go out to clean it up, it's going to take a long time. It's going to be hard work. Probably take even more than a day, depending on how big your yard is, and you're not going to enjoy it as much as you would if you go out consistently and pull those weeds. So it really takes consistent work.
And we talked about this in a previous podcast about, turning that ship around. If you have, say you start out in a relationship and you have a jet ski and everything is just fun, you're splashing in the waves and you have the sun just shining on you and everything is perfect. And then you said, well, you know what? Why don't we go ahead and get that boat? The boat that we can have skiers behind and we can still go have fun. We're all together now. And the next thing you're like, okay, well, that was fun. We really liked having the boat. But now we want to upgrade to the yacht.
Sounds good.
And the yacht has all these different amenities. But you know what? If you don't take care of that yacht, it will go down just as fast as you want to float it down the river. It's just these maintenance things. And I think what you're telling us, Jess, is that these maintenance things in a relationship are a daily thing that we have to do. And if you don't do them, they grow like weeds. And then before you know it, you can't just pluck it out with your fingers. You have to have some major tools to get gardening gloves, and then you have to have the big, massive tools to get these things out. Because, well, it was just a little tiny weed. Now it's a huge tree.
Right.
I mean, I'm being very, overboard here, but it's still true. You have these boats that have to be turned around, and these boats turn into ships, and these ships turn into barges, and you can't turn a barge around in a small or narrow floating way.
It doesn't turn on a dime either, so it takes a while to turn it. And so that's what we were talking about in a previous podcast, kind of that turning the barge analogy. It's going to take time, attention, skill even. To turn it and to turn it well and to get it in the direction that you want it to go. And we've also talked a lot about how each one in the relationship has to bring that into the relationship with them, and they need to maintain that within themselves in the relationship too. It's important to work on yourself. We talked a couple of podcasts ago about, seeing you have to pull out the plank from your own eye before you can really even see the little splinter in right. your neighbor's eye or in your partner's eye. And so it's important to really take a look at yourself, how God sees you, and make sure that you are being the person that He sees you being.
So when we're talking about, our identity and who we see ourselves as being, God has the same thing that we have to realize, is that God has an identity for us. And these identity theft things that we've seen in the past in the news, well, maybe that's just your physical identity, but we're talking about an identity that is a God-centered identity, and it has a lot to do with what God created us for. Mm-hmm. And when we're able to get into the place where we're accomplishing what God created us for, and we are in that relationship that is just growing, you feel ultimately in a place that it's euphoric, actually.
Mm-hmm. It's easier to feel joyful and satisfied when you are at peace, and at peace with God first, and at peace with yourself. And then that carries over into your relationship too with your partner. You can be at peace with them as well.
So what kind of things is it that makes us,
how do we do our relationship?
Yeah. How is it that we do that? I mean, we kind of took some notes, obviously. Mm-hmm. And one of those first ones is...
Mm-hmm. Well, first thing, we've both personally made a conscious decision to value ourselves and then also value each other, to live in a certain manner. And so that meaning, like, for example, I make sure that I do not allow my view of myself to slip. I have to keep it at a certain level. I hope that makes sense.
Well, yeah, you don't let these thoughts that kind of, they kind of just pop into your head, and they're never a good thing.
Right. Like low self-esteem is what I'm talking about. Yeah. Thank you, John. And for ladies, I'm speaking to the ladies right now, and I think I know you can speak to the men, John, but, it's so easy for us to fall in that trap of having a low self-image. But when we do that, that's where a lot of issues can arise, and it really is a trap, and it's a lie. It's a lie from Satan, and so one thing that I made a conscious decision of is that I will value myself. I'm a valued woman, and I choose to see myself as God sees me from what it says in the Bible, and how loved I am and how cherished I am. And so I have that expectation already. And that's really an important thing for men and women. Whether you are just starting out in a relationship, maybe you're not even in a relationship, or maybe you've been in a relationship for quite some time. I mean, I think it might be a little easier to start before you even get into a relationship, to value yourself and to see yourself as God sees you, because then you can come into a relationship that way, and you already have an expectation or an attraction. So when a woman values herself highly, and not in a haughty kind of way, but in a solid, respectable way, she's able to come into that relationship, or actually before she's even in the relationship, she's able to attract that type of man who will value her in that way.
And you'll be able to see any red flags that you don't want to have.
Exactly, because you won't be thinking, well, yeah, I can overlook all these red flags because, I'm not that great, or I don't value myself really, and at least he's looking at me, at least he's looking my way. That's a real trap that a lot of women start to fall into, and so it's really something to watch out for from the beginning. But also, maybe you started that way out in a relationship that way. Well, it is your job to turn that barge around, and start to see yourself as a valuable person.
The funny thing about that is when you have that barge, and that barge wants to find another barge, what happens? We kind of double the impact of a relationship, and that's when you have to turn to yourself and say, hey, I bring a lot to the table with this relationship, but I also realize that I have some baggage, I have some issues that I have to take care of, and I have to solve or cure so that our relationship can be absolutely way better than anything else that we've ever seen. So, some of the other things that we do to help our relationship is we are never at each other's throats, and we don't try to find these low blows low blow. Had to do it.
And so that would include not nagging.
Right.
And there are times, I'll admit, where I feel like I am merely explaining something or how I feel about something, and John will let me know, I got it. You don't have to talk about it anymore. And at first, it kind of made me feel like, well, I still have these things I need to say about it. I don't feel like I'm being heard. But I realized that yes, he does get it. He doesn't need me to tell him 10 different ways before he gets it.
I don't need a blog post. I don't need the 10 different ways that you can get the point across.
Right.
And ladies, I have to say, in defense for the men, is men get it the first time. They really do. I mean, you could even ask them, so what did I just say? And a smart man would say exactly what you said in their own words, so that they know that you got the point across. And, so give them the credit that they are able to comprehend what you're saying. Don't keep driving it in a different way until you've, spewed out everything that you have on the topic. Because honestly, when you do that, you're insulting their intelligence.
Yeah, and then I'm sure it'd be very easy to just kind of tune out after the fifth way that you've
and
told
men
them.
will do that if they've said to the woman that they're with that hey, babe, I've got this. I know what you're saying, and then they keep going on. They'll just tune you out, and they'll turn the radio up, or they'll do something else, or they'll start thinking,
or maybe just walk away,
daydreaming, or if they're in the car. If they're not in the car, then they might just walk out of the room and say, okay, she can keep going, and I'm not going to listen anymore because she said it 2 or 3 times, and then I told her I got it, and after that, it's just an insult.
Yeah.
So, other
that's
things.
really good to know because I think a lot of women, including myself, didn't understand that right away. And then, it depends on how you're brought up too.
This
if
is true.
you have women, around you that you were brought up with who maybe like to nag or think that they're merely, explaining something, but they're saying it over and over and over.
Yeah. So
driving the point home.
Between women, that's normal conversation. But between a man and a woman, it's a complete different dynamic because men think differently than women and women think differently than men. So men have to realize the things that women want in conversation as well. So moving on. We don't
want to drive this home too much.
So the things that you want to go ahead and take the next few?
And one of the things on our list, I wanted to move up to this right after we talked about not nagging and not being at each other's throats, because it has to do with trusting. We trust each other. So I trust that when John says he's got it, and we trust each other. So we're not jealous of each other. We're not constantly like, oh, who's that? Who are you talking to? What are you doing? In a way that makes each other defensive. And but in turn, we would never allow the appearance of an impropriety either. So we trust each other, but we also value each other enough that we wouldn't want it to look like maybe we're not trustworthy also.
Yeah, and
that's important.
And that's part of boundaries, and keeping those boundaries. There's a lot of things that we can say about our relationship that you could kind of pare down to a few different things. After you get to those things, you're thinking, well, maybe these things can't be pared down, but then...
Well, I mean, you can see all these topics. We could go with a microscope, but then we could also do like a 30,000-foot view.
Right.
And so
that's what I was trying to say. I just kind of had a stinky brain fart. Oh. Sorry.
No worries.
But yeah, when we do things, like we're happy for each other's accomplishments and improvements, and that's a part of having an abundance mindset. And
and that's important to be happy for each other when we accomplish or get something cool or make some nice improvement. Instead of looking at ourselves and thinking, well, geez, I feel bad about myself because I didn't get that or do that. No, when we value the other one doing those things or getting those things, it really is going to improve our situation too because we're a team together. We're a couple.
And, part of the marketing side of myself, it just comes to my mind where when you are happy for someone else, guess what? That stuff comes right back to you. And what you focus on will grow. So if you're focused on tearing your partner down, if you get jealous or you're insecure about something, you've got to resolve that as fast as you possibly can because that is affecting your life. That is affecting your relationship. And I know we're kind of dragging this a bit more because we're approaching our time that we said that we were going to do. But, these things are really important to know. Like, for another thing that we try to do is we will never say the words never or always when we're in an argument.
Like, you never do this or you always do this. No, we just take them out of our vocabulary because, for one thing, it's not true.
Right.
And we want to be honest with each other at all times. And then another thing, it just really tears up the conversation because it's like a dig. It's a jab going right into the other person's heart just about with your words. And we don't ever want to do that. Even if we're disagreeing, even if we're in an argument or even a fight, we always still care about each other. And we never want to say something that's going to hurt, especially so badly that we can't recover from. Because, in a relationship, you do make up. And you don't want to have those words that never die. They never go away. You don't want to have those words to just be hanging in the air because too many of those that they build a wall between you, and you just don't want to do that. So just don't go there,
Yeah. The other thing is we just don't let our arguments go past bedtime or sundown, and this goes along with the advice that God gives us in the Word is, don't let your arguments go to the point where the sun goes down on your arguments. I think that's kind of paraphrased.
And we don't look at it like a legalistic thing, like, oh, the sun's going down, we have to stop right now. It's really in our lifestyle, we just don't allow our arguments to go very long.
Yeah,
we keep them short, sweet, to the point, and then we work through it and we get past it.
And when we're working through things, we do our very best to think about the other person's point of view, and then we start asking clarifying questions so that we can understand the other person, where they're coming from, and then we can apply what we're saying to that, and then we are so much easier able to get to a resolution. And that is very key. If you're ever having an argument, you have to be able to say, hey, I understand what you're saying, and then even paraphrase in your own words what you think that they're saying so they know what you're saying, like I said earlier, and then apply that to what you're trying to say, and you're gonna come out with a fast and easy resolution.
It's amazing because more often than not, when we do that, we realize we were both saying the very same thing and mean the same thing, but just saying it in different ways. And it's like, oh my goodness, we're actually agreeing.
Right.
And so that's, we just wanted to bring some of those to you today. We hope that helped you. If it did, would you please be kind enough to leave some comments for us?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Also, if there's a topic that you would like us to talk about or talk more about, please let us know that too.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget, I say this a lot, but honestly, go download our free ebook. It's jam-packed with some of the best strategies and ways to improve your relationship. 7 Simple Secrets is what we call it. And you can find that on our website, therelationshiprevivalists.com. And beyond that, I'd like to just say, hey, having a wonderful week. Do your best every single day to make your relationship just smashing. And we will see you on the next podcast next week.
See you later.